Yes, friends, the last render we took was like this. We last saw the doom light. However, we have some minor errors in the scene here. I want to talk about them. For an effective scene, friends, the curtain is very important. It's very important to do curtain covering. While making the curtain, we will use a very fine detail here and a very simple detail. Without tiring you too much, I will show you how to make a beautiful curtain. We have ready-made coverings in the Sketchup Cosmos library. However, when using this library, we need to make a fine detail. And that detail is very simple, friends. Look now. First, we had taken such a render. Last, when we opened the lens effect denoiser, look, we had reached such a same stage, friends. In fact, what happened here? We added 2 exposures. Let's delete one of these. Look, when you reduce the highlight burning in this exposure, you can eliminate the explosion effect here by reducing it like this. Look, do you see when I reduce it thoroughly? The outdoor scene looks nicer. When I add a slight contrast like this, we encounter a nice result. Now, the thing we need to do here is this, friends. Now, how can we create a curtain texture? When we enter the Cosmos library, while creating the curtain texture, friends, look, there are transparent textures here. Look, there are textures that are see-through. We can use one of these. Look, these are already obvious. There are see-through textures. We have the opportunity to use these as sheer curtains. These are available, and so is this. We have many textures. Look, there are various types of textures here. These weren't available before. Later, they introduced them so that users could do simpler work. You can use these on sheer curtains or transparent fabrics, friends. For example, let's say, what should it be? Let's say this one. It says white sheer, for example. It says graphical. Let's click on this. Let's download it and see what comes up. It downloaded, and you press this. When you press the right arrow, it immediately adds it to the texture library. Look, this is our color. This one. Now, what we're going to do here is this. There is a type of texture we call two-sided, friends. This means double-sided material. So when we assign the material, the same texture appears on both sides. This is a feature specific to SketchUp, friends. I am pressing the plus icon here. Just don't forget the name of the texture here. Look, graphical. White. Now look, I pressed the plus icon. From the material section, look, do you see two-sided? Two-sided, it means double-sided material, friends. I entered the double-sided material. In the double-sided material, front and back material appears none. They look closed. I came here right away, friends. I am going to the G section. I select this in the G section. I selected this part. Look, I put this on the first texture, and I will put the same on the second texture as well, friends. I put the same on the second texture as well. So, since both the front and back of my material are the same, there is no problem for me anymore, friends. The only thing I will do from now on is to apply this texture onto the model, friends. Very simple. Look, well, what did I do? I created it in two-sided. I applied graphical white to the front texture. I applied the same texture to the second one as well, friends. This is the process I will do. Then I will proceed to select these curtains here and apply the texture onto the curtains using the paint bucket tool. I can transfer the texture using the paint bucket tool, or I can transfer it using the Apple tool selection part from the texture library. Look, I selected the curtain. I took the paint bucket tool. My two-sided 2 texture is active. I applied it on top, friends. I'm waiting for it to render. The texture's own pattern will appear on top of this. It should appear shortly. It might take a bit longer with complex and organic textures. Be a little patient. No matter how good your computer is, there will definitely be some lag. Look, the texture's own pattern has appeared. Don't be deceived by this texture, friends. Then I go back to this section again. I select the entire curtain by clicking 3 times. I applied it with the paint bucket tool, friends. Sometimes with these organic models, it can take a long time for the texture to appear. Friends, it's worth waiting a bit. In fact, it can also take a long time if it coincides with the saving stage. Yes, I finished it like this. I exited by pressing ESC. Let's assume we took a screenshot from the screen, friends. Let's assume we rendered from a side from somewhere. I press the render button, and this is how I will see how the curtain texture will look. Two-sided material means double-sided material. When you apply the same material to the front and back, it will give you a transparent, sheer look here, friends. You can apply this to all curtains. You can also apply a normal fabric texture, a slightly shiny fabric texture, to the curtains over there on the side. Very simple. The Cosmos library is extensive. It provides us with a lot of benefits in this regard, friends. Look, our sheer curtain has really turned out in a high-quality way. The backside is visible. The fabric layer on the sheer dirt is visible. It looks quite high quality, friends. It gives us the necessary effect, the necessary texture. Our render is currently ongoing. Look, the render past sections are continuing, friends. When you come to the start section here, look at the time part with the ellipse. We can see the duration here. Let it be 18 seconds, 30 seconds. Let's open these from the layers section here, friends. Look, I'm turning on the denoiser. Did you see? We can see that it's a very nice curtain texture, an original, realistic fabric texture. In this way, Shidisima, you can make the textures higher quality beyond the standard, friends. Look, there's a glass texture here. You can change the reflections of these refraction textures. You can make it nicer. So everything is up to you. In Cosmos, in the next lesson, we will continue by changing the textures and materials from the Cosmos library. Before that, let's make a stop here, friends. Let's add our IS lights to this section here. In the next lesson, let's continue with IS lights, and then proceed with the Cosmos library. That's all for this lesson. See you in the next lesson. If you apply the same texture to the other side, to the adjacent surface, to the curtain surface, you will get the same effect, friends. As you can see, we also had a curtain here. If you apply the same effect to these, you will get the same effect. It's beneficial to do those. Every nuance we add will allow our model and image to be of higher quality. Friends, because these are subtle details, but they are truly important things.